Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Greenberg, and welcome to episode 20 of Talking Headless. Before we get into the show today, I got some things to talk about briefly. Actually, some announcements. One big one, I need a haircut. Like, I really need a haircut. Uh, that was it for that one. But today at 3 p.m. So Brent Leary and I, as you know, do CRM Players. That's kind of the flagship of this whole network. And we were both at, until yesterday, user testing's user conference. And user testing is a human-centered, the best way to put it is, I'd be limiting it if I called it a feedback tool. It really gives you insight via human beings into what customers proactively will be thinking, might be thinking, are thinking, etc. The thing about them that's also fascinating, that it's a convergence of really heavy-hitting industry friends of ours. Susie Penner, who created the independent analyst program for Oracle before anyone in the world had an independent analyst program, is now there doing that. Paige Musto, who we've known, I've known Susie, and Brent has too, for about 20 years. Paige Musto, who is at Acton, is running corporate communications there. We've known her for probably 15 years from Acton and NetSuite even before that. Jamie Anderson, who's a former player in residence, is also he's like the president of global ops at user testing. He was the head of a CMO of CX at SAP, known him about 20 years. And then Johan Reed, who was also at SAP and in the CX world, and a senior leader there. Another guy we've known 20 years. They're all at user testing. Now, we did an hour interview with Jamie Anderson, which will be shown today at 3 p.m. on CRM Players. Please watch it. You're going to love this thing. I mean, it's basically three old friends talking, but the level of discussion and insight that you're going to get from it is pretty phenomenal. It was one of the best we've ever done, and also one of the funniest. And Jamie has some, let's say, other talents that are not specifically related to his business acumen that I guarantee you'll be amazed at, but you got to watch the show. The second thing is, on January 21st and 22nd, PPN will be holding its first, and maybe its last, we'll see, conference in Atlanta at the Atlanta Tech Village called IRL 2025. Interestingly enough, we're celebrating the 15th anniversary of CRM Players on the 16th anniversary, which is about right when it comes to CRM Players. So please, if you're interested in actually attending, it's invitation only. So send me an email at Paul, this is all lowercase, Paul-Greenberg, number 3, at the 56 group, and it's the numbers 56.com, with your name, your company, your title, and your email. And send me that. If you want to send some other text, feel free, but at least that, and indicate that you want to attend IRL 2025. The ticket's free. You'll have to find your own way there, though. But the ticket's free. If you're, but we're capping it at 200. We've got a lot of interest, so I'm not guaranteeing you're going to get it. All right. Finally, and this is a big one for me, and also for what we're doing at the conference. As you know, I ran the CRM Watch List for awards for 19 years, and then a year ago, I sunset the awards. I was the only judge. We would have submissions from companies all over the world, usually anywhere between 60 and, at its peak, until I changed the requirements to tighten it up, 140. Companies would participate. You had to submit a very detailed questionnaire. The typical submission was probably around 60 to 70 pages. We had them up to 270 pages. The questionnaire itself was questions and sub-questions that were like 13 pages of questions alone, and you had to answer every one. So it was hard, and it's very hard to win. You could be my own brother and lose by a tenth of a point, and I wouldn't cut you any slack. So What we're doing though now is it's kind of capping it off with what's called the CRM Watchlist Grand Finale Awards. No submissions necessary. There are 26 categories of companies, of products, and of people. So, like, for example, we have Best CEO, and this is over a lifetime of activity. I've recruited 34 analysts and 3 influencers to help me be judges on this one. They're going to give me their top 3 of the 26 categories. One category is Best Executive Assistant. Another one is the Best CX, UX, CX Customer Engagement Platform. I mean, it's a mix. There's some global awards for most philanthropic company, most socially active company too, right? I mean, in addition to, most impactful company. And again, it's 26 categories. What I would like from you, because the judges are going to make the decisions, though, I want your input. So every day starting on Monday, you will see 2 or 3 of the categories appear on LinkedIn under both PPN and also my LinkedIn account, which is P Greenby, PGREENBE. I would like your input on your top 3 or your top 1 of the best, whatever categories there are. And then I'm going to get them to the judges so that they can think about it. I really would like your input. And in your case, I would like some explanation as to why you think that person or that company or that product is the best. And again, it could be up to the top 3. You'll see the instructions each day with the categories. It's going to be probably 2 to 3 categories, maybe 6 categories a week until the end of the year, something like that. We'll see how it works. Anyway, that's it. Okay, so that's the housekeeping. Again, let's reiterate. IRL 2025, January 21st, 22nd, 2025 in Atlanta Tech Village. CRM Players today at 3 p.m. Watch Jamie Anderson from user testing and the conversation that Brent and I had with him. The third one is the CRM Watchlist GFAs, your input. And the fourth one is I need a haircut. Okay, so with that, I want to start getting to our first guest. So best way to put it, she's wonderful. Okay, she's absolutely amazing. So I met her. I'll give you her name at the end here. I met her when she was at Genesis as one of their chief AR people. And what you find with AR people, okay, not necessarily the practice itself, is when someone's good, okay? And it's not like, look, I've been an analyst for decades, okay? So it's not hard for me to say, okay, this person, really good. This person, whoa, right? And this was whoa. And it was immediate. And Brent, same thing. You meet her and A, she's a master of her craft, B, an extraordinary human being, and C, gets AR. Since she was at Genesis, she moved over to Zoom to become kind of their heavy hitter at Zoom when it comes to AR. And it's fascinating. Brent and I were at Zoomtopia. And honestly, the reason we went is because she said, will you come? If somebody else had said it, we probably would have said, no, probably not. But she's one of those people that if she asks you to do something, you just kind of do it. So we went and we saw something we will be discussing from AR standpoint today, which is Zoom is blowing the doors off its mission. And when I say the mission, though, this is not the same mission of Zoom, the platform we all use all the time, every day, nonstop. It's and Verb, right? It's Zoom, big plans and big product expansion. But the other thing that I noticed and Brent noticed was the analyst absolutely loved my guest. I mean, loved her. To the point where it's like she'd be talking to them, and the thing you always would see with the analysts, which is really funny because it's a pretty crusty group, is they got a big smile on their face, and they're listening to her, and they're basically, again, if she said, "Okay, everyone, come here," we wouldn't say where are we going or why. We just go, right? So, and we knew at the end of that would be something that was important to us because she got it. So, with that, I'd like to introduce a guest I am so happy to introduce, Stephanie Tryhane. Stephanie.
Hi. I swear I didn't pay him for that introduction. But gosh, that was such kind words, and really, really incredibly thankful to be here today.
Well, I mean, look, you're now one of the things that's happened with Talking Headless, which is interesting because it started out like it was just an audio podcast, really, and I was being an analyst. Basically, I would go,
Yeah.
okay, here's the news. Let me comment on the news. Here's something that's not the news, but it's something I have a beef about, or something I like. And I even had a segment called "Something I Like" and something I dislike. And I would initially I would every week it would be I like I like the New York Yankees. I dislike the Los Angeles Dodgers right now. So, whatever. But then I changed it and I made it a live stream. Then I brought on another analyst to communicate, where we would chat about things going on. But then we had Robin Schaefer on the show one time, and it occurred to me, wait a minute, AR people really need to get a voice here because they know their stuff and they
Yeah.
really, really do. And there are some great ones out there who need to get some visibility on how great they are and also the insights they have and the things that they can communicate to people are important for those people. And we always, will get that kind of we always get it when we do the clips and stuff. We always get just a lot of feedback and response from that. And I have something really specific I actually do want to talk with you about today because I was indicating it in the introduction. I mean, when I look, I'd never been to Zoomtopia, and I was being honest when if you were the one asking me, and I can probably speak for Brent too, is we wouldn't have gone. I mean,
No.
it's not right. But you said come, and sure, we'll be there.
Well,
Right?
I sent you guys the invite, and I was like, man, they've declined everything else. So I was like, I'm not going to hold my breath for this one. So I was just really hoping that you guys were going to show up. And it was also the first time that we'd met in person. So
Yeah.
for me, it was just equally exciting. I was
Well, honestly, that was the other reason we went.
yeah.
Look, this is my last tour, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
from now on, I am done. So
Yeah, so I guess I'm just gonna have to make more trips to Atlanta and to Virginia and just do all the
that's
things
an easy one.
with you
And
guys.
I'll put it this way: Trummer's, the restaurant that I love so much, is always in the top 20, the top 50, the top 10 restaurants in the DC metro area. So you
I
come,
mean,
if your hubby's with you, you and your hubby come, and there's a trip to Trummer's and a trip back to the house to
to Manassas,
sample the bar. Yes.
so we can feed the cats. Which, by the way, how is your kitten doing today?
Well, wow, I'll tell you, look, honestly, we when I was in the middle of COVID when
Yeah,
my wife saw the kitten for about the third or fourth time, it was just kind of laying on the deck and was really sick and probably wouldn't have lasted another 3 or 4 days even. So she brings him in, or her in. Layla is
yeah.
her name now. And she brings her in and says, and I'm still down with COVID. She said, we need to keep her. I said, of course, right? It's not like
Well, duh.
it's twice about it.
And just in case anyone doesn't know this, Paul and his wife have been basically feeding the cats of the Manassas area. They stuck it to the man. They fought against the government and basically are now allowed to. But that sweet baby kitten, I mean, was
She was,
really on its last leg, and you guys
yeah.
were
Now her energy. Well, her eye opened, which was really swollen shut.
yeah,
She still has an abscessed tooth, and we're kind of hoping it looks like it's loose enough to fall out, so we don't have to
yeah,
get it pulled. And the vet, her health, she eats like a pig. Her energy level is off the charts. She's playing all the time. She's a great little kitten. It's like
yeah.
we're in love. So, what can I tell you?
No,
So,
I mean, super
yeah,
adorable.
oh, amazing. Oh, she is. I I don't usually post pictures of
You
animals.
should. You should.
We never do, really. Once in a great while I've
I
done
mean,
it.
have you seen Rebecca Wedderman and
Oh
like
no,
her
that's
dog?
Patrick.
Her dog's
Well,
like the cutest.
Patrick's one of the players. So
Yeah, I know. So you should be posting Layla.
we
He
actually
could be on like
well
the feline version.
she's too young yet for the
Oh,
limelight.
okay, yeah, that's
Yeah,
fair.
she's only like 7 weeks,
Yeah,
so
I don't know.
she's really a baby. Her
Yeah.
mom lives at the house. I mean, outside, and
Yeah.
we keep telling her, "Don't worry, your baby's fine."
Oh.
I don't think she cares though.
Yeah.
She's too young a mom. It's like having a child at 12. The way the mom was so young. So,
super baby.
all right. So I go to the Zoomtopia. I
Yes.
see this company that has been a verb, which has its positive. It's positive that you've become part of the culture.
Yeah.
Negative in that if you're going to make a big change, you got to change the word. The verb has to change, right? It's no longer will stand for the same thing. Your mission expanded. The product suite you showed and the platform that you showed took you into realms that were unimaginable for Zoom.
Yeah.
Because, not just communications, it's CX and even CRM and contact center on that side of the house. But it's also like, I mean, let's put it this way: with your AI pieces, I mean, you could literally get into pretty much. I'm not suggesting you do this, by the way, as an analyst. This is not advice. I'm saying this is how wide the change is. You could be in supply chain if you wanted to. I mean, the expansion is that big. Now, as an AR person, you have a mandate when you're a communications platform to talk to people who are minimally adjunct and otherwise directly involved in, I'll call it broadly, communications. All right. Like Brent and I would be on that would be adjunct, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, with your new mission and your expansion, we're in dead center right now, which means there's a lot of other kinds of analysts out there. And, look, you start with a budget. That's what it gives you years. Zoom announces, and any company is the same. Zoom announces a giant expansion, doesn't change your budget particularly. No. So
certainly,
how do you actually first, like, what do you think about in terms of, okay, here's the expansion. What categories are we supposed to look at now when it comes to analysts? Who do we need to contact? What steps we have to take? That would be the first part of the question. So I'll leave it there for now.
Yeah. So great question. I think this is something that a lot of growing companies kind of battle with, right? There's the evolution of company and mission that inherently happens for every single company along the way, especially as they start to build out their suite of product offerings. I think for us at Zoom, so for reference, when I first joined, I joined a company that had 8 product lines. So I joined just as like the end of COVID was kind of happening. And so I joined, we were just starting to launch contact center. And really we were thinking about it from one lens, which was a very lightweight contact center. And we weren't really thinking of it from, it being what it is today, which is a complete suite offering for something that has complete product parity with like a Genesis, for instance. So when I joined, initially it was just kind of understanding the landscape, understanding who plays in this space, which was UC. And then from there, it's kind of evolved, to your point. So we've added contact center. It's become a huge product line. It's honestly, it's in line with what our success was with Zoom Phone very early on. So we're kind of at that place right now where we're really just kind of bubbling at the surface and really going to hopefully take this space by storm. In regards to the program itself, the evolution has been, establishing who we want to engage with. What are our goals? What do we want to communicate out to the analyst community? And then also, what do we want people to know? So realistically, it's collaborating with different segments of the business, understanding what sales needs, understanding what product needs, understanding what marketing is looking for, and then really understanding how these different analysts, influencers, or analysts in general can kind of segment into those different priorities. And then building a program around engagement and around content that we are looking to build, and also just trying to figure out how to navigate that. And that's a constant ebb and flow of, this person can speak to this, but this person does a much better job of articulating the broader product offering. So it honestly, it's ever changing, and it's a lot of fun because it's ever changing. So it allows me to play a lot with the program.
So how do you I guess the best way to put this is, so look, for example, the way I've always made my living, the way I most recently made my living, because I used to do a lot of speaking because of the book and everything else, and that was how I made a lot of my living.
Yes.
I transitioned over to advisory work, which means engagement by a company, right? And it means somebody wants to pay me for my advice rather than just get it for free. Which I'd say is a lot of the analysts, that's the way one way it could be a report they do. It could be, I don't know how many do actual advisory work, but let's say a reasonable percentage. But here you are, so you've had, let's say, historic Zoom has had these people. Like in old Zoom, I would make no sense to engage with particularly. I mean, generally there's maybe something there, but particularly if you're UC, Unified Communications, for those who don't know what that means, UC is not University of Colorado, right? So, I wouldn't make much sense, right? You could stretch it maybe, and then you do it, but not really. In new Zoom, I would. Now, again, I'm retiring, so I don't care. But but in new Zoom, I would. But then you have, let's say, in old Zoom, I'm making up numbers here, just bear with it. You have, let's say, 100 analysts that you deal with. But new Zoom's going to have to deal with like 300 analysts. And in the meantime, ultimately, depending, and you have the institutional analysts, Gartner, Forrester, etc. You have the boutique firms like Constellation and Ventana and all these guys. And then you've got the independents like me and Brent and, and Irwin, who, people like that. Irwin Lazar, who will be my guest the second half of the show.
Which, by the way, lovely individual. I love working with him. He's so incredibly smart. It's like unfair.
Yes, I know. I met him at a Zoho event early in January for the first time.
Really? For the first time ever?
Ever. Oh. Well, again, his and what we're going to talk about, the fact is, his area of it, he is communications, in telco, and that's his world. That's not my world, right? So we didn't really run across each other much. But, the places where you've got a broad portfolio like Zoho, that's where we ran across us. And plus, Zoho works similarly to the way you do, which is a lot of the people that you choose are people can be helpful, even if they're not like directly at the kernel of what you do, right? They can be helpful in a million other ways. But here you are now, you're going to, again, 3 times the number of analysts, and they ultimately make the same kind of living. And they also, like every other one, doesn't want to do free advice forever. They don't mind being analysts who have to cover you. They'll cover you. But they don't want to be, after a while, they're thinking, well, isn't it about time that they did something where they actually paid me for it as opposed to
the relationship's taxed.
Right.
Yes.
And okay, so now you're tripling the amount. How do you handle just the sheer quantity, and then how do you sort it, which is the other side? Because I think people have a really hard time with the sorting of it into, okay, this person versus that person versus this level versus that level.
Gosh. I think that's probably the hardest, right? For us AR people, especially if you're like me, where I think the relationship is your number one priority behind analyst relations. So in regards to our expanding program and in regards to how we're kind of going to be managing things, I think that the biggest thing is tracking a lot of your information. So kind of doing a dump of all of the analysts that kind of cover all of these different product lines. And because we're very spread out, so we have Unified Communications, we have AI Companion, we have our collaboration platform. Each one of those segments has its own set of analysts that cover in different ways, right? And then there's also the analysts that overlap. So you'll see one name that kind of floats throughout, and then other names that are only very, very niche and very, very specific to that coverage area. So I think that the first thing is dumping all your names into a list. And we utilize a platform called Spotlight. They've been absolutely wonderful for us the last couple of months in regards to just kind of organizing the engagements and just kind of organizing our list. From there, we then tier. So I know that this has been brought up many a times,
Yep.
The evil tiering that we do. And I think that something that was mentioned in one of your other sessions was the fact that tiering is very fluid. So one day it might be that you're a tier 1, the next day you might be a tier 3, but it's based on that business priority that you're trying to align to. So is it something that's sales related that you might not be the best advocate for that sales goal that they have, but you're great on a marketing side or you're great from a product side. So it really is fluid. So depending on whatever those different things are, that's kind of how that conversation kind of evolves. But again, I don't think that there's a perfect formula. And I think that that's why it's so difficult. And then also it's just tough for the analysts, specifically the ones that you engage with, you have great relationships with, but maybe you're not on a paid capacity. So now it's a matter of that relationship equity that you're kind of pushing and pulling and then trying to find those opportunities to find budget. And that's where things get a little bit funky, where at the end of the day, you're still friends, right? At the end of the day, you're still very much intertwined. I still know that, a particular analyst's child is getting married, what their first dance song was, and what their, first child's bat mitzvah is going to look like. I know all those details, and they know all those details about me.
Yeah.
On the other side. So it's a matter of trying to figure that out. And I think also budget-wise, I think there's creative ways that you can kind of approach finding budget. So just because the AR team doesn't have the budget today doesn't necessarily mean that the priority can't be aligned to a different business segment that can somehow figure out how to support those needs and those desires. So it's really just so fluid, and there's just so many moving parts. But yeah.
So when you're doing your kind of, I'll call it the hunt for it's the hunt for the new analysts that you're going to have to involve with. I'm not going to say engage, that implies the budget, but somebody you're going to have to reach out to and begin to address and converse with. And on the one hand, and then also just kind of monitoring the activity of all those things, because we'll get I'll get from let's say I'm at a conference, and then I get the survey after the conference, and half the time it'll say, "Are you planning on writing anything about us?" And now the reality is, I used to write a lot. I don't anymore because I got sick of it. I've written 8 books, and that within about hundreds of thousands of millions of words. So my answer was always to that would be no. However, that doesn't mean I'm not going to be talking about it. Right. See, that's the thing. I mean, I always found that to be very short-sighted, that question, because ultimately, look, Brent and I don't do tons of writing anymore. I mean, again, he's written a lot. I've written, that was my whole career, was writing, right, for decades. But now it's video, and you're not going to read video, right? And an audio, which you're not going to read unless you're reading a transcript somewhere. But how do you think about that part? Because people could, let's say, look, obviously, and I'm not trying to toot our horn, but Brent and I are pretty influential in the CRM world, and have been for a long time. But you wouldn't know that if you're looking for what we've written lately, right? So, what do you do?
So I think that that's kind of a loaded question, right? I think that the business really needs to understand what AR stands for and what the goals are, right? So AR isn't here to be like a PR team where we're churning out content, right? We're not engaging with press. We're engaging with analysts. Our main goal is, and it should always be, to engage with you guys in a way that's kind of a back and forth from an engagement conversation perspective. We're providing you guys as much information in a timely fashion, in a package bundled way. So in that way, it's easy to understand. We're engaging with you guys on a consistent basis. And hopefully in turn, you guys are providing us with insights from what you guys are kind of coming across, what you guys are learning, some thoughts that you guys are maybe developing on the back end. And if you happen to write about us, that is phenomenal. That's a great outcome. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the singular reason why I'm engaging with you.
Yeah, and which makes
honestly is a bonus.
Well, I know you know that.
Yeah.
The problem is that a lot of it's always been a PR question associated with an AR survey, and it made no sense, right? So, all right, I have one more question to ask you. Now, Zoom itself is moving forward in a pretty big way. Analyst Relations is in the midst of shifting.
Yeah.
If you're looking at areas of focus now, based on what you see the company moving, which is the area that you feel would be, and it's important for people to hear this because you've already outlined with Zoom AI and contact center and everything else, you know, these are really become important to Zoom.
Yeah.
If you had I know this is a really difficult question in a certain way because it's not fair, but if you had to pick one area where you had to focus, let's call it a new area to focus on when bringing in analysts that would be a benefit, the most immediate new benefit to Zoom, what would it be?
Oh gosh. That's like picking your favorite baby. Like, that's terrible. I think my knee-jerk reaction is contact center.
Okay.
I think that it has the most potential right now. We've been building it, like I said at the beginning of this call, we've been building it for the last almost 3 years in February. So I think that it's propped up to show the most potential right now from a business lens. So just financial, and also providing customers with really unique use cases and opportunities to leverage the platform in a different way than maybe some of the traditional contact center experiences that they've had. I think that the second, if I was to pick my second baby, it'd be probably AI Companion, which honestly, AI Companion is throughout the whole platform. So it's not really fair to say that AI Companion is not really part of contact center as well. So it's just all intertwined. I think that the biggest value add, and this is the biggest thing that you should be seeing from us this coming year, is really telling that narrative, that story around how we're bringing everything together under one single umbrella. So how are we delivering a seamless experience for your customers that's also enabling your agents to have a better communication platform to engage on the back end with some of those specialists? And then also on the other side, how are we developing your teams to be better able to engage, to be able to better pull together their content, to not have to do as much work, but think more strategically and act more strategically. And that's kind of the ultimate goal. So I'd say contact center, AI Companion, and then everything else.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents. But yeah.
Well, thank you, my dear.
Thank you.
Steph, you're awesome. All I can tell you. I mean, you really are just straight out. All right, so
Well, such a pleasure.
I want to have you back.
Yeah,
Probably early next year sometime.
definitely.
By then things will have evolved and we can talk about them.
And I will say, as a side note, I don't think you need a haircut. I think it looks kind of nice grown out. So I don't think you need it. Maybe just a little trim up on the sides.
You can't see the back of my head. Which
are you getting the little tail thing?
Well, I won't call it a tail. It's like just long. It's kind of long. I mean, I think you saw that picture of me in 1969.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Imagine that picture without a beard and with gray hair instead. It's getting kind of looking like that.
I don't know.
Luckily, the headphones pull it all back.
It's kind of implied though, Paul. I don't know. I wouldn't limit yourself, but it was such a pleasure chatting with you. I think you guys are in for a really good chat, you and Irwin. I think you guys are like the perfect match between his nerdy braininess and just his capabilities, and then just of course your open heart and just your capability of being able to navigate those complex.
Just so you know, he heard you say that. He's on.
Did he? Oh gosh.
No,
I don't want him knowing how much I love him. Okay. Take care.
I will talk to you very soon.
Yes, sounds good. Take care. Bye.
All right. I told you. I told you that's Stephanie was that. Okay, so now comes time for it's analyst time, and I actually do love this one for multiple reasons. Now, Irwin Lazar, who's the founder and principal at Metrigy. Let's put it this way: I didn't know him. He runs in a different analyst circle generally. He's on the more in the the telco communications, that universe. He knows that, like, I mean, Godfather level. Okay, so and there's more to it than which we'll talk about. But I met him in January actually at Zoho's event, and we just started talking. And he's one of these people. Remember what I said about Stephanie early on? It's like the second you meet her, you just knew. It's the same thing with me with him. I just knew. Not only did I really like this guy, like really, really think what a great human being, but he knew his stuff. I mean, I'm trying to keep it PG rated, but stuff is not the word I would use here. But he's really, really accomplished. And so what happened was over the months, right after the Zoho thing, we turned out there were like 5 or 6 different people in our area, and we all had lunch at Trummer's and kind of chatted there. And I saw even more coming from Irwin there that was like, holy cow, this he's a mensch would be the best word for it, right? And then I started talking to people and mentioning him to other people who knew him. And what Stephanie just said about, oh no, he knows he's going to hear that I love him. That's pretty universal, actually. He's loved, he's respected for his knowledge. And one of the reasons I want to have him on the show is so you could meet him, because, my world has always been CRM, CX, customer engagement, the customer facing world. And his world is partly there. So he's known in it, but there's a larger group that needs to hear him. And I also want to talk, I want to talk about what his segment is like, and also compare notes a little bit on, does being an analyst different in each of these domains? I don't know. I have no idea. I'm only in the one I've been in for my whole life. I can stretch to the enterprise a little, but that's about it. So I want you to meet this wonderful person. He's, by the way, a very good hugger too. I want you to meet this wonderful person, and I want you to hear the wisdom that this guy has. So, Irwin, welcome, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. It's quite the intro, so I've got a lot to live up to, especially after catching a little bit of Stephanie as well.
Yeah, no, well, we both know what kind of rock star she is, right? So, so let's get right to it, though, because I first do give people a little bit of your history and talk about Metrigy, and I know I didn't really do justice to your coverage area, but that's partly because I don't know the full depth of it, right? So can you kind of dig into that a bit for people so they can hear what you got to say?
Yeah, so Metrigy is roughly about 4 years old now. We spun out of another research company, and we focus on buyer-side market research. So we gather data from end-user organizations about what they're doing and why, what they're spending, what's driving their decisions, how they organize, and so on. We have kind of 2 core focus areas. We have communication, collaboration, employee engagement, which is what I lead. And then we focus on contact center and customer engagement, which is led by my colleague, Robin Garris. We also focus and cover the employee experience space, sort of what a company's doing to gather, to build community and gather performance and engagement data from their employees. And then we also have a second separate service, which is mostly focused on market forecasting. So again, in the contact center and unified communication spaces. Personally, I've been an analyst now for 25 years now, I think it is. Prior to that, my background was in network engineering, network operations. I came out of school working at an IT help desk and grew into network engineering, spent a lot of time programming routers and building and managing networks, and had an opportunity to join a company at the time called Burton Group, which is now part of Gartner. As originally an IT consultant, and then an analyst job opened up in the voice space. And I thought, well, that sounds kind of interesting. And got in at some of the early days of voice over IP and grew from there.
Wow. So tell me this, because it's one thing I don't. One thing that was just you actually surprised me with. I don't know Robin at all, and you mentioned customer engagement there, which actually then I was a little surprised I don't. Right. But so you're covering employee engagement, you're covering customer engagement, you're covering communications. You're covering, and thus, as part of that, I gather you're covering contact center and VOI and, anything voice related still, I presume. Right. So that would be, I assume, like a company, say, like, and I'm just picking one out of the air I happen to know well, 3C Logic would be somebody you'd look at, right? And they're local to us anyway. So, but okay, so for 25, 30 years, I've done this. And there's one thing I've always noticed with CRM and CX and CE, as far as the overarching, I'll call it domain, is that it has a very interesting community, meaning the analysts, the vendors, the practitioners all know each other and are friends. And so, for example, if a vendor person is leaving a company, they'll call an analyst friend and say, can you help? Right? That happens a lot, like a lot. But I've always wondered, because I looked into ERP once and supply chain once about on the analyst and vendor side, and they don't have that. I mean, it doesn't mean they don't have good relationships. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this sort of loosely knit, but very clear cut community. Communication and collaboration, I imagine, does, because it's a personality type that actually gets drawn to these things, right? And plus, you're covering customer engagement. Do you have that kind of relationship with the vendors and the practitioners?
We're a pretty small knit group. I'd say maybe 20 or so analysts that cover the space. Most of us have been doing it for a long time. Most of us know each other really well. There are a number of analyst meetings throughout the year with, think about some of the leaders in our space: Microsoft, Google, Cisco, RingCentral, 8x8, Zoom, who you just had on. All of those have at least typically an annual meeting, live meeting in person with analysts. So we do this circuit. And then our big event in the communication and collaboration space is called Enterprise Connect, which is held every March in Orlando at the Gaylord. It's been for the last 20-something years now. In fact, next year.
I feel sorry for you if you're in Orlando. If you're in Orlando, There's nothing good about it. I call it Orlando. I hate Orlando and Vegas. And Orlando, I call Vegas without the restaurants.
It's a good point. Yeah, and this is actually the 35th year of the conference coming up in March. And originally it was in DC.
How many of them have you been to?
23, somewhere around there. I think
Holy cow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And so we always joke in the analyst community, it's kind of like a field trip. We have our lunches where we're together, our breakfast where we're together, and then we go off, we do our meetings, our sessions, our one-on-ones, and we come back for our dinner receptions and so on. So yeah, I think to your point, and even on the contact center side, it's a smaller group, but definitely that you see the same faces at just about every event.
Well, the contact center overlaps heavily into our universe too on the CX CRM side too. I mean, quite a bit. So take me through a little bit about when you, because you're actually opening a really interesting door here for me, because typically the analysts I have on, we don't really talk about the research part. We talk more about the maybe advisory or the writing, the critical writing, I'll call it, right? Or the critical, media part. But can you talk a little bit about like how you, first of all, what kind of topic areas are you not comfortable with? Do you enjoy actually doing the research on, and also a bit of the methodology and approach you take to market research? Because honestly, there's only some of the stuff I see out there I find, and I'm being judgmental here, of course. I trust. Let's just put it that way. So when you're doing something where you know that trust needs to be validated in the research and the methodology and approach, how do you approach it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I mentioned earlier, we predominantly focus on primary research. We have a group of IT leaders that we work with, that we go to when we do a survey, a set of interviews. We also supplement that with some trusted third-party partners. And then we're going out and asking questions. We're doing an awful lot of data checking and data analysis and looking, we've got a number of catchment type catches in our research to make sure that we're getting data from live human beings. But that's really, the crux of it from our standpoint is to have that, that trusted set of data. And where we position ourselves at Metrigy is, I came from Burton Group, but we had a lot of really smart people, still do, in the Gartner for Technology Leaders practice that it became. But when I would get on the phone with a client and they would say, okay, what do you think of this technology? And I could opine on, what I thought based on my experience. And then they would say, well, what are companies doing? And I didn't really have good answers there. I could say, well, I talked to 2 or 3 companies last week that were implementing X, Y, and Z. But with Metrigy, we're able to back everything up with data. So everything we publish is based on that real world data. And then a lot of the analysis we do is to try and uncover what are the characteristics of successful companies. So right now I'm trying to finish up a project that we'll publish hopefully next week. That's our annual look at the collaboration market. And it's looking at things like voice strategies, meeting rooms, hybrid work strategies. The use of AI obviously is all anyone is talking about these days, management, security, and so on. And so I'll identify what are the companies that are achieving better results through cost savings, through better productivity, through revenue gains, and what are they doing differently? And that's a lot of what we try and share. So it's not just, here's what's going on in the market, but here's what the characteristics are of successful companies. So if you're a vendor, hopefully you can use that to make sure that you're helping companies achieve success. And if you're an enterprise or an user, you can benchmark yourself against your peers. And I guess to your question earlier about what do I really enjoy? I think that's a big part of it, is digging into the data and uncovering what's working, what's not. I'd say specific technology areas. Obviously, AI is consuming a lot of our time now. Trying to help understand how companies are adopting it, how they're dealing with training, governance, security, compliance, et cetera. And then just that broader enterprise communication, security, and compliance area. It's our space has gotten a little more consolidated as Microsoft has gained a lot of market share around calling and team collab and meetings. And the areas where there's still a lot of need for guidance is, how do I secure the applications that I have? How do I deal with compliance? How do I manage to make sure that I'm not having data leakage, that people aren't going out and using WhatsApp and I'm getting $1 billion in fines from the SEC here in the US and so on. So that's where I've spent a lot of the last year really digging into.
So let me, to me, I honestly, I've done some market research over my career, but I don't do much. It's not really my thing. I was much more on the advisory side, and CRM watch list was all the research I needed. Right? Basically, I would get 270-page submissions of detailed information about companies that was, except for certain earmarked places, was not ever going to be confidential. It was meant to not be confidential because I needed to use it in public with things. So, and I would get 70 to 140 companies, or 60 to 140 companies submitting, and I would have a typical submission date was always December 31st, right? And then so starting January, I'd have a month to read a minimum of about 6,000 pages.
Wow.
Right? Oh no, it was like that every year. Well, every year once it got some traction, but so I graded every.
Ask you a question. How did you find the time to do that reading at the same time that you have meetings and travel and whatever else?
You know what? I basically gave up what call it, free time. Number one, it would take me an entire month, and there was some culling that you could do. Like, for example, some of the companies who would submit before I tightened the rules, because it was a really hard award to win. I mean, again, it's like out of 100 plus submissions, maybe 15, 16 people would get some level of the award, or companies rather would get some, and it was not geared toward technology. It was geared toward the impact by a company in the prior year and 3 years subsequent. Like, you had to prove you had the infrastructure and you could handle 3 years of continuous impact after, right? And it was very complex because it was based on changing, market conditions, geopolitical conditions. So the weights of the answers, the weights I gave to the grading of the answers changed every year. So it's complicated, but let's put it this way. It was an impact award first, okay? You have a company that submits, until I tighten it up, anyone could, that's 4 months old, and they submit on a 13-page questionnaire, they submit 18 total pages. I can pretty well rule them out for having the level of impact they're going to have. They just wanted to be in front of me. That was what it was, right? They knew, okay, I can talk to Paul Greenberg in CRM, right, an analyst. So because I've always been very accessible. So that wasn't hard to eliminate a lot of those. When I tightened it up, it was much harder because I still get very large submissions. Zoho is the one who gave me 270 pages. Oracle would give me routinely about 200 plus pages, and never guaranteed you would win. Never. But I just, all the time I had free, I gave up, and I had always no paid engagement during that month ever. It was part of my rule was we're not working in January on any of this. And I typically wouldn't travel. I'd basically sit at my desk at home and I printed every page out and I would mark it up. It was very difficult, but it was fun. I mean, at the same time, I had more information than Gartner did on these companies. So, which is actually the case.
Wow.
So yeah, it was great. Anyway, so let me take this though to a different direction, because I always talk to the AR people about how they, their relationship with the analysts, how they think about it, what they do. You're literally going to be the first person I'm asking this with all the analysts I've had on the show is, what about the other way, right? I mean, your relationship to the AR people and how you pick and choose those people and that company. I know you pick the company from the area, but as well as I do, you have different expectations for different companies, and they're going to be tempered by what you learn over time. So how do you think about, okay, I want to engage with this company, but even more so, how do you think about, okay, I need to talk to the AR person. And then when you talk to the AR person, how do you say, oh, wow, this is a really good AR person, I want to keep talking to them, or, oh my God, I need to get away from this person, but I still need to talk to this company. How do you handle all of that?
I guess I've been fortunate. I haven't really had a bad AR experience, but I'll reach out to companies that I haven't talked to that are new in my space, I haven't come across before. Usually get set up with whoever the AR person is, and assuming the call goes well, we'll continue to engage. I'd say for me the biggest area that I try and do, or the biggest effort I try and make, is to meet the AR people where they are. So, if I'm talking to Stephanie, as you had on from Zoom, I'm more likely to go to Zoom chat and try and ping her there, where I know she's doing her work, and it's more convenient for her than to send her an email, where I'm sure she's probably getting thousands of emails a day or a week. And I find that with other companies as well. If you go to the app, again, it's a little different in the collaboration space, because most of the companies I'm using have a collaboration platform that they would love for you to use. So that's usually where I'll go out. And I think it's really just making, trying to make their lives easier, understanding that, I haven't worked in AR, but when I talk to AR people, they're getting pulled in 25 different directions. They're getting lots of requests for data from the people that they're supporting, constituents. They're getting requests from analysts for data. And a lot of analysts aren't, I don't think, truly understand how many different requests they get. So, okay, I need this from you by Friday. Well, I'm not going to get it to you for 2 more weeks. So, just trying to be easy to work with. We're actually in the middle of doing a survey of the clients we work with. That's one of the themes we've heard, that we're flexible and easy to work with. So I think that's really key, is just, put yourself in people's shoes and try and understand what they're going through on a daily basis. But yeah, I guess, again, unfortunately, I haven't had a bad analyst relations experience. I'd say the only ones where, the relationships tend to be strained is where AR folks come to you and they say, what can you do for me in terms of promoting my product or service?
Yeah.
I don't really care to get your insight. I want to reach your audience. And that's not, there are influencers out there. That's just not what we do. And so when we have relationships that don't last very long with companies, it's usually because they've only viewed us as a means to promote themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, basically AR people acting like they're PR people.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, look, I've known some PR people who've been put in the AR position. And one of them in particular, Kim Guillen at Oracle, she's amazing. She got it. I mean, again, it's not, there are others I've met over the years. They're lovely people, these PR people, but they don't get it. They keep, like, to your point, they're constantly pushing the idea of, what about placement? Can you write something on this? Can you write something on it? And you try to explain to them, no, that's not how this works. It's not analyst relations. Just because the word relations is in it doesn't mean it's the same thing. It's very different than what PR does. And again, lovely people, not bad people at all, but they don't get it. Kim got it. Like, she nailed it. She actually runs the independent analyst program at Oracle CX now.
Oh, excellent.
And she's phenomenal. She and a woman named Yvonne Donaldson, who I knew from pros at the very beginning of the company, was the only other PR person I ever got put in a position who really just nailed it. Yeah, so there are people out there who occasionally get it. Now, let me ask you this, though, and this is kind of a tricky question. One thing I was mentioning to Stephanie is that, that, look, especially independents, because, we're not under Gartner or Forrester utilization requirements or something like that, because those guys are under all kinds of pressure, and we're not. So, and I think independents have always been a little more, giving in terms of willing to give free advice and talk through, somebody wants an hour of your time. You're not going to say, give me $18,000. You're going to say, sure. Right. So, and you talk, and that's it. And I've never charged for an hour of my time in my life. If somebody wants, they can give me a dozen hours, ask a dozen times in a year, and it would be free the whole year. But there does come a point where you realize, or you think, it's not necessarily conscious on their part, they're kind of starting to take advantage of this thing a little bit. So what is that point exactly? Because I had a point where, and it only happened twice, where I had to tell the company, no, I can't do this anymore because you haven't even made a gesture, right? So, it's like, it's kind of almost like an engagement for money. It's not the money so much. It's just like they appreciated that you've done all this and you're human, So what is that point?
It's a good question. Again, I think when it becomes one-sided, when I'm not, if I'm on a call with somebody and I'm not feeling like I'm getting anything out of it, and they just want to know what's going on with our research, a lot of the responses will be like, hey, I could answer that question if you were a client because we've got this wealth of data, but I'm not going to give anything away that our clients are paying for. We do reach out to companies that we feel are really important in the space, even if we don't have a client relationship with them, and try and stay in a regular cadence with them. In that case, if I mentioned I'm publishing a study fairly soon, I might offer them an hour where I'll go through some of the highlights of it, as a means of staying engaged with companies I feel I really need to stay engaged with. But again, I think that varies as well. We've had companies that, will offer a briefing because we feel like we want to know what they're up to. And then the briefings just become very one-sided and they're constantly, reaching out and asking us questions. And at some point you have to cut them off and say, look, I've given you X amount of hours here. Happy to continue the conversation, but here's what we do with our clients from a relationship standpoint.
So kind of an adjunct of that, I have one final question for you that I think would be interesting to hear. So if you look at, say, the way Salesforce runs AR, right? John Tashik, of course, oversees market strategy, and then Ann Chen kind of is the AR person. But one thing I know John has told the AR people is, look, you're going to be talking to analysts all day and night. Influencers now for them, but analysts all day and night. And you're probably going to become friends with some of them. I think they're going to become your personal friends. You may even want to marry one of them. Who knows? He said, that's fine. You don't have to separate your business from your personal life. The only thing I ask of you is that you remember who you work for. That's what he said. And that's one of the reasons they have one of the best AR teams probably ever, and amazing people. And I know from my standpoint, I have a number of personal relationships there with like Ann and Kathleen Obata and people like that who I absolutely, and John, I knew him before Salesforce. I've known him for 20 something years when he was a reporter. So, but they're my friends. Okay. And no question about it. Doesn't mean I'm not going to cream Salesforce publicly if I have to, but they are my friends. And some people say, well, we don't work that way. We want to. How do you work? Because you're a lovely human being, and it's that's part of
you too. I think I've developed a lot of good friendly relationships, and people I consider to be my friends that are, even though we're on the AR side. So, I try and let my data do the speaking. So I'm not coming in with anything I can't defend or trying to wage personal vendetta against a company for whatever reason. That's just not who we are, and I don't think that's who I am. And the beauty of going to these events and meeting some of these people in person is that you do develop those relationships. I was at Cisco's event last week, spoke to one of their AR leaders, and most of our conversations were about their kids and Halloween coming up. Right. You mentioned Salesforce. I had a call yesterday with some folks from Salesforce, and we talked again about Halloween and kids and things like that, as well as what we wanted to cover. But I think that's also really critical. If you're just having a call with someone and you're not taking the time to get to know them and benefit from the being an acquaintance of them, I think you're losing out on a whole part of what we do for a living. We have to have fun at work, right? We have to enjoy the people we're meeting with and talking to. And it's one of the reasons why I love talking to you. And I was excited about coming on the show is, it makes the travel and everything else we do a lot more bearable when there are nice people to chat with at the events.
The cool thing with me and you is we're in the same area, right? So we get to go to lunch, right?
Yeah, it's only an hour away, the 10 miles or so. Yeah, traffic around here.
Yeah, exactly. So, Irwin, thank you, man. You're amazing. I love you to pieces. I know you. You're actually. It's interesting because you're one of the people I've probably known the least amount of time. But it feels like I've known you forever, really. It feels like I've known you all the decades I've worked, right? So thank you. And thank you, of course, Stephanie, for having been on the show. And I guess that's it for this month. Next show will be November 20th because I'm going on a cruise the next week, so I will not be around. I will be enjoying myself on the ship because I'll never leave the ship. And I can't tell you who the guests are yet because I don't have a clue. So we don't plan that far ahead, right? So thank you, everyone. We will see you soon. And with that, I guess we'll take you out. Mashed up, broken into two. I didn't know I was pretty till I took a look at you and I'm rolling. Yeah, I'm still rolling. Baby, there ain't nothing I can lose and I sure got the blues.
This has been a Players Productions Network digital broadcast.